Ricardo carried a heavy burden. Each step felt harder than the last, like the weight of the world was on his shoulders. Life had dealt him a series of blows, leaving him feeling defeated. The bad news seemed never to end, each rejection letter a fresh wound to his self-esteem. He lost his job, his source of income and pride. That job was more than just a livelihood. It was a part of his identity, something he deeply valued. His family, once his safe haven, was crumbling under the weight of its own problems. The constant arguments and lack of understanding only increased his sense of isolation. Loneliness became his closest companion, whispering doubts in his ear. The nights were long and solitary, and the silence was deafening. His once bright spirit dimmed with each passing day. He looked at old photos, remembering happier times, but those memories now seemed like a lifetime ago.
Ricardo felt like a failure. Every glance in the mirror was a reminder of his shortcomings and everything he had lost. He couldn't support himself, let alone be a source of strength for others. The bills piled up, and every attempt to solve his problems seemed futile. The world seemed to move on without him, its vibrancy a painful reminder of his own emptiness. He felt like a spectator in life, unable to participate. He withdrew into himself, seeking solace but finding only despair. The walls of his room became a prison, and the window a distant view of an inaccessible world. The weight of his sadness threatened to consume him entirely. Every day was a battle to find the strength to carry on.
Ricardo's days became indistinguishable, a blur of pain and hopelessness. He could barely remember the last time he felt truly happy. Sleep offered no escape, only nightmares that mirrored his waking torment. The nights were as torturous as the days, and rest seemed an unattainable luxury. He felt adrift in a sea of despair with no land in sight. The vastness of the ocean reflected the immensity of his sadness. The once simple joys of life, the warmth of the sun, the laughter of children, no longer held any appeal. What once brought him joy now seemed distant and unattainable. Ricardo was trapped in his own personal darkness, yearning for a way out. He knew he needed to find a way to break free, but the light at the end of the tunnel seemed ever more distant. Despair became Ricardo's constant companion. He wandered the deserted streets, feeling like a shadow of his former self, a solitary figure in a world that seemed to have lost all its color and life. He clung to it like a shroud, suffocating his spirit. Every breath was an effort, every thought a battle against the darkness that threatened to consume him completely. He felt utterly alone, lost in a maze of sadness and fear. The walls of this maze were high and insurmountable, made of painful memories and deep regrets. Every day was a struggle, a painful reminder of what he had lost and what he feared he would never regain. The old photographs were a constant reminder of happier times, now distant and unattainable.
Sleep offered no escape. The nights were long and filled with torment, with Ricardo's mind racing in endless circles of worry and fear. Nightmares haunted him, filled with images of his failures and fears. He saw familiar faces twisted by suffering, familiar places transformed into scenes of terror. He would wake up in a cold sweat, his heart pounding in his chest, the echo of his anxieties clinging to him long after the dream had dissipated. The feeling of panic lingered, making it impossible to go back to sleep. The world seemed cold and indifferent. People passed him by, preoccupied with their own lives, oblivious to his pain. Its beauty, once a source of comfort, now mocked his pain. The landscapes that once brought him peace now seemed distant and unreal, as if they belonged to another world.
Ricardo retreated further into himself, seeking refuge from the pain but finding only deeper isolation. He hid in the shadows, trying to escape the curious glances and uncomfortable questions. He avoided contact with other people, fearing their judgments and pity. The crowd was a sea of unfamiliar faces, each one representing a potential threat to his fragile emotional state. His once warm smile was replaced by a mask of pain, his eyes reflecting the inner turmoil. He saw himself in the reflection of the window, a stranger to himself, lost and directionless. Ricardo was trapped in a prison of his own despair, yearning for a glimpse of hope. Every day was a struggle to find a reason to go on, a relentless search for a light at the end of the tunnel that never seemed to arrive.
On a particularly dark day, as Ricardo wandered aimlessly through the city, he came across a small church. It stood on a quiet street, its doors open, a beacon of warmth in the cold reality he inhabited. Hesitant, Almost against his will, he entered. The gentle silence of the church enveloped him, a stark contrast to the storm raging within him. The air vibrated with a subtle energy, a sense of peace he had almost forgotten. As he sat down on a pew, the weight of his despair seemed to lessen slightly, as if an invisible hand had lifted a corner of his burden. Ricardo closed his eyes, his breathing becoming a little easier. A sense of calm, fragile but real, began to settle over him. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, he felt a flicker of hope, a small spark in the darkness of his despair. He didn't understand it, didn't dare to hope, but he found himself drawn to this place by the sense of peace it offered. Embracing faith, finding strength, Ricardo returned to the church the next day, and the next. He found solace in its silent embrace, in the soft murmur of prayers, in the gentle hymns that filled the air. Slowly, timidly, he began to listen to the words spoken, words that spoke of hope, forgiveness, and a love that transcended understanding. The message of Jesus resonated within him. It spoke of redemption, of second chances, of a love that could heal even the deepest wounds. Ricardo clung to these words like a lifeline, drawing strength from their message of hope. He began to pray, hesitant at first, his words clumsy and uncertain. With each passing day, his faith grew stronger, a beacon of light piercing the darkness that had enveloped him. The burden he carried didn't disappear overnight, but it felt lighter, easier to bear. He found comfort in the church community, in the warmth and compassion of people who had also known pain and found solace in their faith. As Ricardo's faith deepened, a subtle but profound change began to occur within him. He felt a new energy, a new perspective that had once seemed impossible. Despair, though still present, no longer held him captive. He began to realize that, despite the hardships, there was a light at the end of the tunnel. Hope, fragile at first, blossomed in his heart, nurtured by his newfound faith. Each day brought a new challenge, but also a new opportunity for growth. He began to believe in the possibility of a brighter future, a future where he could find peace and purpose. He started small, with steps that seemed insignificant, but that were fundamental to his journey. He volunteered at the church's soup kitchen, finding quiet satisfaction in helping others who were struggling. Every smile he received in return was a reminder that he was on the right path. It was a small step, but for Ricardo, it was a monumental victory. He was beginning to see the positive impact of his actions, not just in his own life, but in the lives of those around him. He was no longer focused solely on his own pain, but was reaching out, connecting with others, rediscovering the joy of giving. He realized that by helping others, he was also helping himself. Ricardo started taking better care of himself. He understood that to continue helping others, he needed to be in his best physical and mental shape. He started eating healthier, exercising regularly, and sleeping better. These changes, though simple, had a profound impact on his overall well-being. His days, once an endless cycle of despair, gradually filled with purpose and meaning. He found joy in small things, like working on personal projects and getting involved in community activities. He was rediscovering himself piece by piece, rebuilding his life on the foundation of his newfound faith. Every moment of reflection and meditation brought him closer to his true self. His transformation did not go unnoticed by those who knew him. Friends and family noticed the change, and many were inspired by his journey. They saw a sparkle in his eyes, a strength in his demeanor that had been missing for so long. Ricardo became a living example of overcoming adversity and resilience. Ricardo was living proof of the transformative power of faith, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. His story was a reminder that no matter how dark the night, there is always a new morning waiting to dawn.